This video is an open letter to Patreon. Dear Patreon, please, for fuck's sake, fix your currency conversion. Now we all know what YouTube is like in 2021. Copyright claims, copyright strikes, content ID matching, revenue sharing, demonetizing inappropriate thumbnails, community guideline strikes, false flags, and straight up false claims. YouTube in 2021 is the financial masochist's wet dream. And I mean, who doesn't enjoy going to bed each night knowing that when you wake up in the morning you might not have been paid? Or that your channel might have straight up disappeared. But fear not, we have a savior for the individual content creator, the lone wanderer, and the freelancer. Patreon. Patreon. With your promise of anxiety-free finances and the novel idea of getting paid for the work you produce. Who could resist such a charming and community-focused platform? Except that platform is built on a foundation of what I can only assume is liquid fecal matter, when the numbers are lies and the currencies are meaningless, where robots are broken and support seems to be as confused as the content creator trying to battle the archaic sadistic machinations of a platform architected, I can only assume, by Cenobites. Now me, being the upstanding bastion of YouTube humility, civility, and perhaps the only good content creator on the entire platform. Well, I suppose, of course, except for Ambig or Spiff or any other YouTube content creator who said anything nice about me. Me being me, I believe that anyone who writes a comment or leaves a message deserves to have it read at the very least, and if it comes with money, a handwritten response, and manual management of their request. But, I hear you cry, why don't you automate your Patreon things? It would be so much simpler. And yeah, I mean, it's true that despite popular rumor, I am only human with a limited amount of time, but for reasons I will soon elucidate. Trust me when I say at this stage, meticulously poring over each patron's details individually is far less of a headache than leaving it to the hands of automatons. Let me introduce you to Flight Gamer. Flight Gamer is a very generous person and supportive patron who agreed to let me use them as an example in this complaint to properly illustrate the problem. And let me preface this entire thing with the following. Everything you're about to see with Flight Gamer was the least confusing way for me to explain a confusing situation. So when someone joins the Patreon, I'm greeted with a lovely message saying something like, "Hello, I'm a new patron and I would like to be added to the shoutout lists." And I think, well, that's great. Let's just take a look at the top here and see what list I have to include them on. So clearly we can see that Flight Gamer has pledged $15 a month, which is already somewhat confusing given that I set my Patreon page in tiers to my local currency to avoid PayPal taking extortionate conversion fees. But whatever, it's not a big deal and I can just convert the currency anyway. You might also notice they've been a patron since March and their lifetime pledge is $46.72. Wait, $46.72. So that means that they must have adjusted their pledge to $15 a month at some stage. But even if we take that away from the total, that leaves us with $31.72 or $6.34 a month if we divide that between the remaining 5 months of pledge time. Unsurprisingly, I don't offer a $6.34 a month tier, so I guess we assume Patreon are deducting platform fees or transfer fees. I have no idea. But hang on a minute. This person is on the shoutout list. That means they must be pledging at the £2.50 tier, seeing as the tier above that is £7, and $6.34 is only £4.58. So this individual, up to this point, must have pledged $6.34 a month for 5 months at a £2.50 tier before upgrading to $15 a month. Okay, so we should assume they are at the £10 a month tier now, seeing as $15 is $10.83 when you convert it. Oh, you sweet innocent fool. Luckily for us, Patreon offer another summary screen, the Relationship Manager, which shows their current tier, their pledge, and their lifetime amount, plus when they joined. And if we look at that for Flight Gamer, it's £7 a month with a $15 pledge, which again, as a reminder, is £10.50 a month. Why yes, this is the company I am trusting to pay me the correct amount. To clarify, the money is always added up correctly. I double check it. This is simply a front end issue. Financially, everything is sound. Okay, so we've established that Patreon has some bizarrely outlandish conversion rates that will make even PayPal blush. Then we glance slightly over to the left and see the lifetime amount of £46.72 GBP, not dollars, pounds sterling. So that last screen that said it was $46.72, that I assume was wrong. Or was it? Well, then let's add it up. $10 a month for 5 months, and then a $15 for a month is $65 in total. Then we convert that to pounds sterling, and there we go. £46.72. Perfect. So we finally cracked the Patreon code. 7 equals 10 and 46 USD is 46 GBP. And as long as the other data is correct and they've been a patron for 6 months, oh, silly me, I guess 5 is also 6. And if you're thinking, wow, that's pretty fucking terrible, let me jump back to what I said at the start. Everything you're about to see with Flight Gamer was the least confusing way for me to explain a confusing situation. Just be glad I didn't choose a patron who pays in, I don't know, Danish kroner? What the fuck are they doing? I manage everything manually. I don't just download the list once a month and read that out. I want to give people the option of calling themselves whatever they like as a shout out. Maybe someone signed up to Patreon with their real name and would like to use an alias. Maybe someone just wants to call themselves Joseph Stalin the Cum Stallion. I don't judge, but I do like to give them the opportunity to do so. It's pretty much the least I can do. Being given so much conflicting information, it's inevitable that in nearly 900 patrons, I'm gonna make 1 or 2 mistakes despite my best efforts. Then I have to make the decision to either honor Patreon's misinformation, and by extent, me mistakenly adding them to the wrong tier, or send an awkward message explaining that the rewards I initially added them in for were incorrect because I glanced too quickly at it, or made the mistake of trusting Patreon, and now I'm having to remove them. So going forward, I have to ignore all of this, this, and this, and instead just stick to this right here. The only piece of information that I assume is accurate. As far as I'm concerned, there are 2 things Patreon could do to make my life and the lives of what I assume are many other creators much more simple. Firstly, remove all other information. Why even include it when I'm just going to ignore it anyway? Give us a single correct number. Secondly, and perhaps more radically, bear with me here, make the platform you've promised. I originally left Patreon to join Ko-fi, a competing platform for fans to support the content they enjoy. I returned to Patreon because of the additional transparency for people who support me, which is a whole other discussion, and the addition of local currency support. Had I known that the currency support would be this incredibly poor, I would never have left Ko-fi in the first place. Is it really this complicated to take the values and convert them into a single opt-in currency? Is it this difficult to unify the currencies across the board? Your company was valued at $4 billion US dollars. Or maybe it was 4 billion GBP, who fucking knows? Make a platform that supports your international audience, the people who have contributed to this gigantic wealth. Otherwise, with the rise of platforms like Ko-fi and their recent addition of messages and managing tools that rival Patreon's own tools, not to mention things such as Podia, Indiegogo, LiberaPlay, Memberpool, and whatever that whole mess surrounding whatever ThinkSpot is, I'm surprised that Patreon isn't doing more to improve this and much less of this shit. But I'm in the Patreon ecosystem. It's just enough of an inconvenience to make my life far more difficult, but not enough to get me to leave the platform entirely and sacrifice a huge chunk of my earnings, plus the monumental ask of all my patrons to follow me, yet again, to another platform. Do better.